Cook Well video number 9. So this is session 5, part 1. And we'll be making warming winter chicken casserole. And you can leave the chicken out if you're vegetarian. You don't want meat, but I'm going to incorporate some leftover brown rice. So this is kind of a one-dish wonder. And we're also incorporating some sea vegetable called hijiki. This one's real high in iron, promotes a strong body. And sun-dried tomatoes. So it's yellow curry, cumin, coriander, rosemary, and sun-dried tomatoes. So good. And the vegetables are the kale, yellow squash, and green beans. In this video, we're going to talk about hormone protocol with whole foods and how whole foods help balance our hormones. So I'll read you from my list of hormone highlights that I give my clients. And the pros and cons of soy. There's a lot of information out there now coming out that soy is not necessarily so good for all of us, and there's certain ways you want to eat it so that it is most beneficial if you do soy. We'll be making a tahini salad dressing, which I'm going to give you the basics for the recipe, and from that you can change it up and do whatever tastes best for you. Like if instead of apple cider vinegar you like lemon juice, you can do that, and you can do parsley and chives instead of tarragon and dill, or you'll get creative with it, but I'll give you the basis for this wonderful tahini dressing. So I'm going to start just by sauteing our vegetables and our chicken with our yellow curry before we add our cheese and our eggs and put it in the oven to bake. And I'm using this pot here that can both be on the stovetop, and it's got metal handles. These aren't plastic, so they wouldn't melt in the oven, so that we can throw this in the oven when we want to. So I'm basically going to add a little bit of olive oil, or your high oleic safflower or sunflower oil. Any of your medium or high heat oils. You could add ghee or butter. Curry, yellow curry, and cumin and coriander. I did about 2 parts cumin to 1 part yellow curry to 1 part coriander. We'll throw our carrots in there too. And our chicken. So the carrots are pretty dense and take a while to cook through, and that's why I'm throwing them in with our chicken. Maybe a little bit of water. I'm going to add a little bit of water just because it helps everything cook. It keeps the oil at a lower temperature, and it really surrounds all the food with this warmer element that surrounds all the food with heat, so it helps things cook. What I did with our sea vegetable and our sun-dried tomatoes was I soaked them in about a cup or so of water for about a half hour before throwing them in here. And this already smells wonderful. And you can throw these in at any time, so I'm going to throw them in now. And we'll let this come to a boil, and we'll let it simmer for a few minutes before we throw in our green beans and squash and kale and leafy herbs, and stir in our cheese and eggs and rice, and then we'll put it on to bake. Looks like one of the sun-dried tomatoes, I didn't chop it with the scissors. So this is what they can look like when they're dried at your natural food store, or even in bags at Trader Joe's. I believe they have these. And I just like to cut them with kitchen scissors into, smaller pieces. Sun-dried tomatoes are very sweet and tart at the same time. They go really well with yellow curry and rosemary. It's been one of my favorite combinations for spice combos for a long time. So we're going to let this get warmed up. So I'm just going to strip this rosemary. So I want to get it off the stem like this. I'm just going to chop it real fine. So if you grab the end of it and pull backwards, it usually comes right off the stem. It smells so good. I guess I definitely have my favorites when it comes to herbs and cooking. So while I'm chopping this rosemary, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the pros and cons of soy. And then we'll go into the hormone balancing factors of a whole foods diet and lifestyle. But they're finding that we don't need a complete protein in every meal. And soy at first was touted as the kind of a miracle food that you could sustain yourself on, or that if you were vegetarian, it was the complete protein for the vegetarian, you know, and that also it was touted for the phytoestrogens that were in it, that it would help certain women or be beneficial for women. But we're finding that all those phytoestrogens aren't beneficial to all women, and we don't really need a complete protein in every meal. And people are kind of shying away from soy so much now because it can really, if it's grown commercially, it tends to suck up a lot of selenium in the soil, and it can lead to selenium toxicity. There's also an element in soy, and I don't know what it's called, but it also binds with minerals when it's unfermented or unsprouted. So if you do soy protein as one of your main sources of soy protein, I would say, because soy milk is not sprouted or fermented, you want to do like maybe oat milk or almond milk, one of the other ones. But instead of tofu, tempeh, it's a cultured soybean and rice cake. If you do just soy or just tofu, do it with miso. See, the women in Japan, they eat their tofu with miso. It's a fermented food, and something about the live cultures in that miso work with the elements in the soy that would normally bind with minerals and inhibit their absorption, to break that factor down in our bodies. So either have your tofu with miso or have your soy in the form of tempeh. When you have soy that's been manipulated by the food industry, what they do is they manufacture or create a plant that has pesticides in the tissues of the plant itself. Genetically modified or genetically engineered foods. And soy and corn are two of the most common genetically altered foods that you want to definitely make sure you get your soy and your corn organic and GMO free or non-GMO, so if you can find them. Along with having the pesticides in the tissues of the plant so that when the bug eats it, it dies right away. They also spray them heavily. I'm just chopping our rosemary here real finely because it's really pretty strong. It's a strong herb. So if you put the whole leaf in there, someone might say, ooh, that's yucky. And a whole foods lifestyle balances our hormones in such a wonderful way. You know, you're getting enough water daily, getting the right amount of minerals through your food. See all this real mineral-rich dark leafy greens we're incorporating into our casserole, and we're eating the heavier foods with animal protein and fat in the colder times of year for warming and building and cleansing in the summer and spring. There's so many factors that benefit us when we switch to a more natural diet, and hormone balance has been one of them. Okay, so now that our rosemary's chopped, and I can see that this is getting cooked here, I'm going to turn it over once. These. Beautiful. Doesn't that look great? I'll use a good teaspoon and a half or so. A little bit of dill, if you like. Kind of steamed down in here. And the dark leafies, they will cook down, so you can pile them high in there and put the lid on, and they'll steam down in there after a few minutes. Maybe even less than a minute. Depends on how much water you have in your pot and how high the heat is. But we'll let those steam down in there. I always just put my spoon right there. So you want to eat whole organic foods to avoid hormones that are artificial hormones that are in beef and chicken, commercially raised animal products. Of course, staying away from genetically modified and antibiotics. And be sure to get your vitamin and minerals through the vegetables, varying all the colors in your vegetables. So you want your trace minerals through the sea vegetables and your other minerals from the dark leafy greens and the carrots. So centering the diet around vegetables and either meat or grain, whatever's best for your body type. And staying away from the packaged processed foods that have been stripped of their nutrients, and the oils are rancid or oxidized is a huge step. Getting enough water daily is great, and remineralizing that water so that your body can recognize it and uptake it. Address food allergies that you may possibly have. So gluten and dairy sensitivity is common in menopausal women, which does contribute to excess weight gain. And dairy products are also a source of unwanted hormones unless they're organic. So nature's design is to put weight on premenopausally in order to protect us against stroke and osteoporosis. But the commercial dairy and commercial animal products can exacerbate that and give us too much weight gain at that time. So anyway, this is the most important thing for hormone balance is blood sugar balance, because everything, body chemistry, brain chemistry, and hormones are all affected by blood sugar. They all sort of ride off of whatever the blood sugar is doing. So if we can stabilize our blood sugar levels by saying no to processed foods, shopping on the periphery of the grocery store, right? Staying away from the cookies and crackers and chips and breads, unless they're sprouted breads. The Ezekiel bread is great, or a true whole wheat sourdough I would say that's fine, because it has been sprouted or fermented, right? The sourdough is cultured or fermented, and the sprouted grain bread is sprouted, so there's no phytic acid in there to inhibit mineral absorption. We need those minerals for hormone balance. They say avoid too much caffeine, alcohol, and spicy foods. And of course, commercial feedlot raised meat. So all of these foods aggravate the liver, which is involved in the detoxification process of excess hormones in the body. So if we can get it out of our diet, or what's coming in this way, our body can handle the excess hormones our body's already naturally producing at that time, to be able to handle it better. Get adequate sleep. Relaxation and playtime is important. And the type of exercise that's right for you. See, in blood type diet and in Ayurvedic typing, we all need different kinds of exercise. You know, some of us might want Tai Chi or yoga and do more meditation, and others of us, like a type O blood type, might need vigorous running or more aerobic exercise. So we're all kind of a shade of gray between those two extremes. So find out what's right for you and get enough exercise daily or weekly, in other words. The foods that help support liver detox would be the cruciferous vegetables, so that'd be cabbage and Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, and broccoli. They say sulfur-rich foods for some reason, so that would be the garlic and onions. And also the crucifers or brassica family vegetables, the kale and collards and Brussels sprouts. So those are all real high in sulfur as well. Organic food state sulfur that your body does need. I'm going to turn this off now. High antioxidant foods like turmeric, ginger, ground mustard, and berries. Those are all great for hormone balance. And foods high in B vitamins, the lean meats, the whole grains, and the dark leafy greens. Adequate plant source calcium. We're going to talk about this in the last video, calcium uptake, but it's very important for hormone balance as well, that you get plant sourced calcium. They say plant sourced calcium is actually superior to dairy sources of calcium. And you can get that through the unhulled sesame seeds. So whole sesame seeds are kind of tan or brown instead of off-white. And a quarter cup of those is 40% of your daily value of calcium. And they're just wonderful. And you have them with a magnesium source like your brown rice. It's real assimilatable that way. So I'm stirring in our dark leafy greens, and they're just wilting right down into all this warm liquid in the bottom. And they're just gonna pretty much almost disappear in there. See how they cook down so nicely like that? I know we're getting close, so I'm gonna push all the greens down into the liquid so that it'll basically blanch them down in there. Then we're gonna stir in our eggs and cheese and brown rice. I hope they all fit in this pot. And I'm gonna switch to a cooler burner just because I don't want our chicken to get too tough and get overcooked. I'm gonna turn our oven on here to 350 and stir in our brown rice. So this is our one dish wonder here. So we've got our whole grain brown rice, our complex carb. The carrots are a good complex carb too. But brown rice is so good for us in so many ways with the mineral content and the alkalizing nature of it and the fiber. In macrobiotics, they say you can eat as much brown rice as you want because it's so good for you. I think it's the #1 recommended grain for most body types. It's been a staple for me for years, and I just love it. Look how pretty all this is. What was that? So I'm stirring in our eggs and cheese. I'm going to leave a little cheese for the top of the casserole. And you could put cayenne in here, you know, use your own preferences with flavors. Okay, so I'm going to stir in about 2/3 of our pound of organic cheddar cheese. This is a grass-fed cheddar from New Zealand. I'm just going to kind of fold it all in here. And so you can add your sea salt or shoyu or tamari soy sauce or some dulse flakes and lemon at the end if you're staying away from salt. But also remember that unrefined whole sea salt is good for your body. There's necessary trace minerals in there that you actually need, and that the refined salt is bad for you and messes with your blood pressure. So, you know, don't be afraid to have some whole sea salt. I'm going to put and a layer of cheese on the top. You could make this real pretty. Uh-oh, we got cheese melting on our hot plate here. But, you know, you could put a little bit of dried rosemary and cayenne on the top if you want. We have someone here that's eating with us afterward that doesn't particularly like hot, spicy food. So I could put, you know, I could sprinkle a little cayenne just on half of this on the top for people who do like that spiciness. And I think I'll do that just to show you. So this is just kind of like a pretty effect. The cheese on top, kind of like a lasagna. There we go. Very pretty. Sprinkle cayenne just on half for those who want a little bit of spiciness in their chicken casserole. And then some rosemary on the top just because it's pretty. See, this is a very chef-like thing. Yeah, that's very pretty, right? It's art. I'm an artist. There we go. If this evaporates, some of the liquid evaporates out, that's just fine. But if you had something in there that was dry, like, just chicken breast or something, you'd probably want to leave it covered to keep the juices in. But that really doesn't matter. So I'm going to finish with the hormone highlights. So the plant source calcium, adequate plant source calcium would be the unhulled sesame seeds, cashew nuts, Brazil nuts, almonds, dark leafy greens, cucumber, carob, and the sea vegetable called wakame. Cultured goat and sheep's milk yogurt are way easier to digest, preferably if they're raw. So you want to get them sheep or goat, organic and raw, if you can. And get your balance of omega-3 fatty acids from fish oil or flax oil or hemp oil. And another fat that we use in cooking, it's from India, it's clarified butter. It's also called ghee. This is also something that's known as a great hormone balancer. So I found that was very interesting when I read that. But you want to make sure that before you eat too much ghee or butter that your liver is properly digesting fats. So if you feel like fats are hard to digest for you, like maybe you see some of that floating at the top of the toilet when you go to the bathroom, you might want to take something called lipase. It's a fat digesting enzyme, so that you can more easily digest and assimilate heavy fats like ghee. There's herbs you can also start taking, and herbal combinations in teas, or just the straight herbs if you want to go for those. But it's very interesting about the body types and herbs for hormone balance for women that are better for certain body types. So we have dong quai, wild yam, vitex or chasteberry, raspberry leaf, and nettle, and pau d'arco. So they say that dong quai is balancing for the yang type woman, or the more male type woman with more outward male energy, a loud voice, small breasts. And then for the women that are nurturing and receptive and yin, or way more female, maybe large breasts, they say the wild yam is more balancing for the yin type woman. So I thought those were all very interesting when I researched those. So next we're going to make our tahini dressing. And I'm going to give you the basis for it, but you can get creative with this in whatever flavor spice combinations you'd like. Here we are with our tahini salad dressing. I'm going to teach you how to make the basis of it, and you can do whatever flavors you want. It's so great to get creative with it. Water, shoyu, soy sauce, which is right here, and our tahini are the three main ingredients. But you can do a little bit of agave or honey and get it on the sweet side if you want. And the tarragon and dill and parsley go great with the sweeter flavor if you do have a honey or agave in there. And then, just change it up. You'll see how I make it. It's so great. So I'm going to add water first. Maybe a third of a cup, quarter cup. Depends on how much, you're making here. But this is my tahini, which is sesame butter. And I got this in the bulk section of my natural food store, which means I could get as much or as little as I wanted. I could fill this little container, or I could just put in, a small amount. So I'm going to basically stir in about 2 or 3 tablespoons into this water. And it's full of good fat. These sesame seeds have a nice rich flavor because of that fat. So good. Tahini dressing. And what I did was I looked on the back of the bottle of one of my favorite salad dressings and simply I looked on the ingredients and used the first 4 ingredients basically in whatever proportions I guessed they used, and I just kept experimenting with it every time I made it. And so you can do it on the sweet side or not, and vary the herbs. It's just so fun to get creative with it, and people will love it. Yes, good tahini. So I'm going to stir this in, and we want it to be watery like this. You don't want it too thick, or it'll just kind of clump up in your salad or your fish tacos or whatever you're putting this dressing on. So the water gets it to a nice medium. Add a little shoyu soy sauce. You could add a little sea salt and just water. So you can do either shoyu or sea salt, just like in our casserole. Oh, maybe 2-3 tablespoons here. And you know, keep tasting it and adding more or less as you make it. Taste as you go. It smells so good already. Now I don't really want to bring it to a boil, but it's on real low heat, so that really helps the tahini kind of soften and liquefy and emulsify with the water. So you know, you don't want it too hot, because eventually it would begin to burn on the bottom if you had too much heat on here. But just a little bit of low heat really helps it the consistency that you're looking for. So I like adding some apple cider vinegar. You can do either apple cider vinegar or lemon or both. I'm going to add about a tablespoon. Oh, see that? See that thing there? That's the mother. So apple cider vinegar is a cultured food, and this is actually a protein strand. See how it says with the mother? These are the protein strands in this particular ferment, and they're very good for you. So that's not a big deal that they have the floaties in the raw, unpasteurized, organic apple cider vinegar. So don't worry about that. And now I'm actually going to turn the heat off. This is a electric hot plate, so it retains some of the heat. So this little pad under here is going to stay warm for me for a while. But as soon as it comes to being warm to the touch, then you want to add your herbs in. And I'm going to keep this on the salty side today with dill. Well, you know, you could do anything. I want to add dill, tarragon, and parsley, and leave the agave or honey out of it. It's in the past turned a little too sweet for me, and so I prefer the savory flavor with my salad dressing these days. But you know, my mood could change, and next week I'll probably want something sweet in there. So that's the basis for your tahini dressing, and you could put it on, you know, your fish tacos, or black bean tacos is great. And I don't usually carry my spices. Well, I don't have my spices at home in plastic, but these are real convenient to take to people's homes when I teach them to cook or to do these videos, you know, for traveling around. So that's why they're in plastic. But I recommend keeping your spices in little glass containers away from heat, you know, preferably about 65 degrees or below, so that they don't you know, age too fast. And your leafy herby spices, they kind of lose their flavor and aroma after, they say, about 6 months. And your ground spices like the cumin, coriander, yellow curry, ground ginger, those last a little longer, but those last about a year as far as their aroma, the real strong aroma you want. And also to keep those in glass containers. Not right above the stove either, because it gets hot there. So you think of your herbs and spices just like you do your oils. Here's your homemade tahini dressing. I'm going to taste it here. Needs a little more salt. So I'll add another tablespoon of shoyu, which is diluted, so it's actually half a tablespoon of shoyu. I diluted it with water to be able to use it in my stir fries. Much better. And I'm gonna add lemon, because I love the sour flavor. And I've noticed that when I use lemon in my tahini dressing, that the tahini kind of curdles a little bit. And that's okay. It's fine. So I hope that helps you, and thanks for purchasing this video.